morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're joining us, welcome. This is the North Suffolk Community Services Wellness Series, and my name is Kelly Knox. I am the Assistant Vice President of Advancement and Grants Management, and I am the host of this show. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and May 1st through the 7th is Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. So today, we will be talking about the critical intersection between diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and the mental wellness of youth. These two topics have tandemly burgeoned over the last few years, but in separate ways as a result of documented racial injustices, such as the murder of George Floyd and the restrictive lockdowns of COVID, respectively. It's time to bring them together and to understand how they intersect and how we can best help our children thrive through a sense of belonging and overall wellness. Our conversation today is with Dr. Jennings, the Equity, Diversity, and Excellence Officer at Chelsea Public Schools, and Ms. Brenda Peña, District Administrator at Chelsea Public School, overseeing the Social Work Department and Student Mental Health. So as a leader in education, Dr. Jennings is committed to leading at the intersection of education, community, and government. This cross-sector approach has allowed him to impact the lives of children for over 15 years. He leads Chelsea Public Schools' equity, diversity, and belonging initiatives, ensuring that the district becomes a more equitable and inclusive school community. In addition, Dr. Jennings oversees district social workers, counselors, and the Children's Cabinet. Dr. Jennings received his Bachelor's of Arts in Religious Studies and Government from the University of Virginia, a Master's of Social Work from Washington University in St. Louis, and a Doctorate of Education Leadership from Harvard University. Ms. Peña began her career in education in 2016 as a school adjustment counselor. She served as a resource and supported students through transitions, emotional struggles, peer interpersonal difficulties, and academic stressors. In 2014, Ms. Peña began her leadership career as a head of family and community engagement at Bentley Academy in Salem. 7 years later, in 2021, Ms. Peña became the first Latinx and first female principal of Waltham High School, as well as the first leader of the Waltham Public School District, correct?
Yes, the first Latina.
Right, Latina. Ms. Peña holds a Bachelor's of Social Work from Wheelock College and a Master's in Leadership through University of New England. She holds a certifications, licenses as the Attendance Officer, School Adjustment Counseling, Principal PK, Director of Pupil Personnel, Director of School Counseling, and Superintendent. So welcome, Dr. Jennings, Ms. Peña.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
That's a lot of background you guys bring to your work.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of commitment.
A lot of commitment.
A lot of
yes.
commitment.
A lot of years and a lot of commitment. This is
Yeah.
wonderful. So the last few years have brought about monumental changes in children's mental health. But this has started way before COVID, right? The U.S. General declared a mental health crisis as a result of COVID.
Yes.
But prior to that,
Yes.
the CDC has did a study, and it showed significant increase in sadness rates in youth and such, right?
Yeah, prior to the pandemic, 1 in 10.
1 in 10.
1 in 10 students showed symptoms of depression and anxiety. Post-pandemic, now we're looking 1 in 4 with depression and 1 out of 5 with anxiety. So we're seeing an increase.
Yeah. And the same is true for suicide, for feeling sad, for feeling depressed. All the markers across the board has increased post-COVID for mental health for middle school, high school, and even college students.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. But it's not just COVID, right? The racial unrest throughout the country during COVID kind of has added to this circumstances.
I would say the racial unrest was an amplifier, particularly for many Black and brown youth being confined due to COVID. but and also seeing yet another multiple back-to-back racial killings. It was just a magnifier. I know personally for me, I had to step away from social media because I knew what it would do to me. And so for our young people who may not have the ability to modify behavior or foreseeing that something may come down, that they, it was an amplifier for them. It was an amplifier, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree with Dr. Jennings, and I think, other contributing factors is, the isolation, and I think just this social unrest and these local and global issues that are occurring it occurred hand in hand during COVID, right? And it was amplified. And as a result, the isolation, the lack of socialization, lack of ability for students to connect, hours on end. As we know, students come in with structures and routines, right? Their job is to be a student. So when this happened, it was not only were they spending numerous hours at home, sometimes unsupervised, or with family that they weren't used to being with 24 hours out of the day. Lack of socialization, they weren't seeing their friends, they weren't connecting with extracurricular activities or any type of school programming, which really impacted and elevated and really brought to light the increase of mental health that we were already seeing. We knew there was an uptick, but this really just brought it more to the surface.
No question. It was an amplifier. And because of what Ms. Peña talked about, the isolation, all of that, it caused dysregulation. And then, I don't know, forgive me for not getting my timeline together, but there was already documentation reports done by Congress on social media titans and how, just the sheer platform cause mental health disorders in many of our young women. And so knowing that to be true, and then you layer that with COVID, you layer with social unrest, and it's, you shouldn't be surprised to see what's taking place right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and it's a little bit devastating. But for our audience, why don't you explain just shortly or briefly what dysregulation means?
Yeah, so dysregulation is really just when there is this unbalance, right? There is when you start seeing kids, their brain is functioning a certain way, but then you see this chemical imbalance that is created as a result, which really then impacts how they behave and in terms of decision making. So, to Erin's point in talking about, you mentioned, female students, and really when you look at the impacts that we're seeing right now, studies do show that from ages 16 to 18, young females of color are impacted more as a result of the pandemic and other external factors, right? And I think with the pandemic is one thing, right? The social unrest is another. We're also not, I think one thing that we do really well in Chelsea is we're looking at the whole child and considering the whole child. And that whole child, kind of approach is how we provide our supports. We have students that have a lot of external factors, whether it's divorce, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's substance use, financial stressors as a result of the pandemic. And that's something that is very real for our student body.
Yeah. So, for example, in kindergarten, a dysregulated student would symptoms would be unable to sit on the square or on the X in the class, just fidgety, getting up and moving and walking, or in middle school kids unable to communicate to each other, to talk to each other without an outburst. In high school, the same thing can be seen modeled from kindergarten to middle school to high school, but just more appropriate, or not appropriate, but developmentally not appropriate for the age bracket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think, it's something, one of the things that we are seeing is really the lack of inability to problem solve, right? Basic problem solving skills, coping skills. Those are things that I feel have been lost. And schools because we're really the holders. I mean, I think people feel a certain way when they say, why is all this pressure being put on schools? Reality is, we see most, if not all kids, right? We're one location that has all of these kids in attendance. So being able to structure those supports and making sure that we reimagine, and I think something that we've really done and under Dr. Jennings' leadership and working together as colleagues, we've really tried to reimagine what those supports look like, recognizing that we are the holders and we have a sense of responsibility to provide those supports.
I am real big on us being able to pivot, reimagine. How can we change our thinking to meet the present needs of our students today? We have to do that because what worked in 1990, what worked in the 2000s, will not work in 2023 servicing our students.
Right.
We can take learnings from yesteryears, but we have to be present today. And so as a result, I'm so grateful for North Suffolk and your many years in community partnership with our school district. I even want to commend you all for this series of making sure our community understands the impact of mental health and mental health as relates to DEI work, diversity, particularly to Black and brown students. How does it impact? And this, for so many years, I think we as practitioners have ignored the unique challenges that Black and brown individuals go through as it relates to their mental health challenges. So I just want to thank you for leading the charge with that in our community. And thanks, North Suffolk. And I'm also want to, commend our school district in being culturally responsive to our students, meeting our students where they are, whether our students want to speak Spanish in their therapy sessions, we can do it because we have the capacity, we have the bench for it. Whether it's embracing technology and making sure that we're able to meet the needs of our students outside of school setting or in school setting, we're able to pivot. But that took mantra, that took adaptive change, that took adaptive thinking, not individually. I have an amazing team. Brenda is an amazing colleague. Ella Kokonides is an amazing colleague who oversee our school counselors. So we are, in my department, we are tier 1 to tier 3, from universal to high intensity individual needs. And so I'm so grateful for a team. I'm so grateful for the leadership of Dr. Beta, who understands and put budget where needs are to prioritize social workers and school counselors and our telehealth supports for our students. Forgive me for rambling, but this is serious, and I'm so appreciative of this opportunity.
Well, then let's get down to maybe the nitty and gritty and back end of it. Like, how do you help these children repair? Like, what are some of the activities that you engage them in, or that you suggest that they do, and speak to the what is different about motivates Black and brown children, or what the causes are, and I'm speaking to. I forget the wording you used.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of, being, a Latinx female myself and, really looking for folks that are a reflection of you, right? And that understand where you come from and your lived experience. I think that is something that really, for me, I was here in Chelsea in 2002 and worked at Roca and at the Collaborative as well. But coming back here, that was critical for me because I recognized the efforts that the district was making. We just don't say that we're doing mental health work or that we recognize we actually, there's action steps, right? And these community partnerships that, Dr. Jennings, had discussed and praised. That is something that is very unique. I've been in other districts, and this is a district that by far, when they say they care about their students and their community, they really care about their students and their community. We're doing great things with other new community partners. We have telehealth providers now that is, that we are funding, and that's been huge. Studies have shown whether you're doing telehealth or not, it's still an effective form of treatment. So really taking that approach so that our families have access, especially for our families who have mass health. limited. They don't have access to these services and supports. Being able to coordinate efforts. I also work with our young parenting coordinator, at the high school level, being able to provide. So for me, I think districts have always been, and I've been in education for quite some time, since 2006, so being able to, we're always very reactive in the work that we do. And I think that's something that Dr. Jennings and I, and with Alan Kokanides, we've been really working closely as a team to talk about preventative. How do we, starting at pre-K, do we give our kids and our students the skill sets that they need? So this is our generation. This is our next generation moving up. We want to be able to prep them and support them so that they can manage. We know there's going to be difficulties in the world. This is now, but there's other things that are going to come locally and globally that are going to impact our students. And we want them to be able to navigate, but also to utilize strategies so that they can improve their mental health.
So an example of what Ms. Peña just shared about starting in pre-K, this year was the first year that our superintendent funded school counselors at our elementary schools. So next year we're getting 2 more school counselors. So all of our elementary schools will have school counselors and social workers. So we're covering, that's T1, Tier 1, universal. Everyone is going to get support, appropriate support, base needs met. And that's kind of like the foundation of ensuring that when the students get to middle school and high school, they already have the ability to self-regulate. They already have the ability, all those things that they learned in elementary school. And so I just want to make sure that we talk about the whole child.
And it's a culture shift. You want to make sure that, the leadership, right? Leadership needs to be on board. Teachers need to be on board. Families need to be on board. It is, community partners. It really is, we're all valuable stakeholders when it comes to doing this work. I'm a firm believer it takes a village to raise a child, and I stick by that. And it takes everyone to help support. And I think that's something that I feel Chelsea is doing very well, is to ensure that. And we're thoughtful with the process. We recognize it's going to take folks time, but we're taking that time to really educate ourselves, to learn from each other, from our community partners, but also to reimagine and really assess the need, right? We have to hear from those receiving the services, and those are our students and families, and reassessing that need in terms of identifying, okay, where can we go next, or what do we need to do next to fulfill those needs and where they're asking us.
So part of that is kind of reflective feedback. We're all asking our students, so how was this? How was this service? What did you like? What did you didn't like? How can we modify? How can we adjust? Brenda and her social workers and Ellen and her school counselors have an open door policy. Students will come in and talk and share kind of this feedback, which is necessary and important in this critical need of meeting the needs of our students, particularly mental health needs. It's so important.
So 2 questions, and then you can take it off from there. You're starting at pre-K, what are the character traits or that you're trying to infuse in these young children that they bring it forward? What specifically? And how are you engaging families? Because if you're helping children with these things and they go home, that can be offset if the family isn't involved in it. Is this correct, I assume?
Yeah. So let me take, I'm going to take the back end, and Brenda, you can take the front end. And so as relates to our families, Brenda said this has to be community village. And so what does that look like? Our school district, we partner with our families. Dr. Tamar Blake-Canty, she oversees our family liaisons. And so every school has family liaisons, some schools multiple, depending on the size. And our family liaisons, I like to describe them as kind of the front door for our families. And as a result of that, our family liaisons work closely with our school social workers, work closely with our school counselors to wrap around our families to make sure they have the support, the care, they need, the insight and the information they need to, I don't want to say parent, but work in partnership with the school. So last week we partnered with one of our telehealth providers to have a virtual online session on families and mental health, on how families, parents, and guardians can look, identify, and even sometimes even address the needs of our students. That was virtual. We had over 50 registrants to sign up to lean into this virtual session. I mean, those are the things that kind of a paradigm shifting, a pivot that a school district will have an outside provider to have a Zoom session for parents on mental health. You all have, North Suffolk has one coming up with an amazing author and clinician. We're excited about that, partnering with you all to share that information. Our family liaisons pass it out. Our social workers pass it out. Our school counselors pass that out. I mean, like, this is the work together that we must do with our families. And so it's so vital.
Yeah.
And then you had asked specifically in regards to pre-K and what that would look like in regards to what skill sets. You know, we want our students to self-advocate and be able, right at that level, you talk about, you know, what does it mean to be a good friend? How do you raise your hand to ask a question? You know, those are, you know, we're trying to embed SEL throughout the entire district, but not only just say it's a segment of our day. We're working with SEL leads as well. That's something that I facilitate and oversee is our district initiative, and we're working with Trails for Wellness to be able to embed day-to-day curriculum so that a math lesson could also embed those SEL components. And that's really kind of what we're trying to get to, is really just giving kids the day-to-day skills that they need to be successful and to be able to self-regulate, but also feel good about being present in school, feeling like they are part of a community, feeling welcome and supported.
Kelly, I'm going to take your role right quick and ask Brenda a question. What does SEL look like within the math or
and what
reading
is
or
SEL
language
for
arts? Yes.
So SEL is social emotional learning.
Yes.
You know, so if we're looking at a math lesson, you know, it's as simple as a teacher asking, you know, they're going over problem solving. You know, how does this problem make you feel? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel uncertain? You know, being able to really try to embed that you know, to use that terminology and to be comfortable with it, and that it's really just embedded, right? As simple as a do now. You come in, students do a check-in, you know, and they're able to, you know, how are you feeling today on a scale from 1 to 5? Where are you at today? And that gives teachers the ability to really know and to feel the classroom and say, okay, I can move forward with this, or do I need to take a step back and just give the students a moment to reflect? And I think those are things, you know, we have a pretty large team. We have an SEL lead for all schools. We have administrators that participate as well. We meet monthly to do this work, and we're excited to have future partnerships with other SEL programs, such as the Urban Assembly that's out of New York, that they're like the SEL gurus, and do really great work. So really just trying to do restorative work and repairing work. You know, teachers can have guided discussions. They can do those circle conversations with, right, those are tier 1 related supports. So being able to really ensure that our teachers have the resources and the skills, and our support team to help navigate those conversations.
Yeah. I hope you're picking up, I'm going to highlight that something is like, I think gone are the days of us as educators working in silos. We must be collaborative. We must work across departments. And so I want to highlight and give kudos to our superintendent for seeing the mix, the connection between me as a district equity officer, but also seeing the wellness component and how they both go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's all in one department.
Yes,
I was like,
is
wow, that's crazy.
Yes,
That's
yes,
brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it helps. I'm a social worker as well.
Yeah, he's a great social worker.
but you know, and it's valued. I mean, my partners, my colleagues across the Commonwealth. I'm now seeing a trending topic is many of them are now bringing SELs under their auspices as equity officers. And so I'm grateful that, this is going on our second year. And so we've already, crossed the finish line with that. And it's together. It won't separate. I mean, this is likely.
And I appreciate you bringing that up because it's, for many, many years, and, we both have been in education for quite some time, right? There is silos, and it was always seen as separate. And you're going to do the mental health work, and you're going to do the instructional work. You have to marry the two. If kids don't feel engaged, if they don't feel good, if they're depressed and anxious, they're not going to do well in the classroom environment. So being able to embed those skill sets and supports within the classroom during instructional time is also very critical for that sense of belonging. And those are things that we do have to marry the two and find a way to marry the two so that it is effective.
Yeah.
Doing it in silos is just not the answer.
So an example of that, I don't know, I feel like I'm always kind of like giving examples,
That's all right.
and I'm not the, I'm the
Examples are
macro
good.
practitioner.
Because people can connect with
Absolutely.
examples.
So Brenda mentioned that she's leading our district SEL team, where she didn't mention that her colleague, her co-colleague or her co-conspirator, Matt Messina, is one of our district leaders for instruction. He's an instructional coach. And so they work in partnership to lead this SEL initiative, this SEL focus for our schools. And so, yes, she as social worker bringing the social worker side, and then Matt is bringing in
And
the
that's
instruction
the
side, the
marrying.
academic side.
Yeah.
That's the marrying, which is
Okay, so I have a question
Yes.
because I don't understand something at
yes,
all.
yes. Sorry, we academics can
Yeah, we
do that
sometimes-
academic lingo really,
It's
really
not something I
well.
don't understand about you. It's something I don't understand about other people. Is
Yeah.
what's the argument against SEL? And I don't understand it.
And I think it varies. It varies by, you'll see differences in different districts in regards to the work. And, what I hear, and I disagree, is that people feel that we are softening what education is. We are enabling our students. We're doing too much hand-holding. And those are things that sometimes, very common, and I'm sure, Dr. Jennings has heard this as well, is what you hear often. What we need to recognize is that education didn't look like it did 25 years ago, as Dr. Jennings had mentioned. It's really shifted and evolved. And meeting the students where they're at and identifying their needs and really just trying to leverage, right, their strengths and what they can offer in the moment is really important.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important, and we focus a lot in Chelsea in getting to know our students by name, strength, and story,
Absolutely.
because we firmly believe if we don't know our students, if we don't know their needs, doesn't matter what we put in front of them. They're not going to be able to retain any information because guess what? They're struggling on whether or not they might have food on the table when they go home for dinner tonight, right? So that's the reality of where we're at. Or, so being able to provide those supports and doing, and recognizing it, it's going to take a long time. It's hard work. Equity is work that we have to do every day, all day. For me, until, the rest of my time in education, it just doesn't stop here. And we recognize that it's a long road ahead, but we're willing to put in the work with partners like, Ellen, Matt Messina, who's been an amazing team member with the SEL work, but being able to really make sure that we are all on the same page. And that's one thing I can say from, the central office team for Chelsea Public Schools is that their messaging is very cohesive, and it is strong, and Dr. Beta is leading us in the right direction, and I'm excited to be a part of this team, and being here, coming back, has been wonderful.
Yeah.
It's been a really great experience.
I want to say some also SEL, as Brenda said, is not watering down the curriculum.
It's not what?
It's not
Not
watering
watered
down
down.
curriculum.
Yeah.
It's not. It's equity is ensuring that our students get high quality instructional material, and so the two are together. I think I think the narrative is, as Brenda said, that people think it's watering down, but it's not. we're holding both together. We're holding both together.
Right.
And it can be done.
It can be done.
Because we're
You
doing
guys are
it.
doing it. Yeah.
And I will say, we opened up by sharing the statistics. 1 in 4. I mean, we you know, and so if we don't recognize the humanity of our students, then how can we educate them?
It's a great question.
You cannot. And so I look at SEL as and this work that I'm doing as equity officer as honoring the humanity of our students and families. And so when you see, recognize, honor the humanity, you have to modify, you have to pivot, you have to do something, because you will see a need. You will see where there need to be strengthened or where intervention improvement has to take place in partnership with them. And if so, and if it's in our willpower, if it's in our wheelhouse, our sphere of influence to help, then we must do it. And that's why we have pivoted as a community, as a school community, to be responsive to the mental health needs of our students and their families.
And reimagining, right? When we think of what a portrait of our graduate and what we want our students to leave with and that skill set, it is beyond college and career readiness at this point, right? That's a component of it and an important one. But recognizing that our students need to have the skill sets to be able to navigate the challenges that come with being in the real world. And for us, it's critical to ensure that we are able to provide them with the resources and support, you know, prior to leaving CPS, so that we can then ensure that they have those skill sets to navigate conversations, to navigate emotions. Life is complicated, you know, and we want to make sure that it's beyond the instructional. And it is a component of instructional, right? We're educators, and we feel a sense and an obligation to ensure that we are providing them with everything that they need beyond just that math curriculum.
Yeah. Brenda, I want to thank you for bringing the students. I want to just take a quick pivot and say that we have amazing students.
Yeah, we do.
I posit that we have some of the best students in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our students are resilient, they're brilliant, they're caring, they're compassionate, and I consider it an honor every day to come here and serve our students. Every day, not a day doesn't go by where I am in awe with the brilliance of our students, whether it's at the middle schools or the high schools or the early learning center or our complex, the elementary schools. I mean, it's just so amazing. The passion, the commitment, and our students' desire to make change and be change and see the change not only in their community, but globally as well.
That's a beautiful way to end our conversation, isn't
Absolutely.
it? So thank you both so much for joining us. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll join us again, and have a lovely evening.